This is All the Things with Michelle Wolf.
Well, I really appreciate you joining me. I am really excited to talk with you
Like what?
about all the things. And it's funny, I've always said that, I don't know, all the things. Um, and so when I was trying to figure out a name for my podcast, and people would ask me, well, like, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, I want to talk about all the things. Like, and that's just so it's funny
And I was
because it's
like, "Bingo, that's the show."
yeah, and then I even got some pushback being like, "No, you should really like pick a lane." And I was like, I don't think I can." And then I was like, "You know what? I don't think I really have to." And that's my rebellious nature.
You don't need to pick a lane.
You know?
All those people that say you need to have a niche for your podcast, all those people that say you need to have this your logo has to be this size by this size. It's all
And that, you need to pick, like it's your brand but my brand is all the things. Like I am a multi-dimensional being and it covers a lot of ground. So I'm going to cover all of it. Um but yeah, thank you for joining me today. And I want to allow you an opportunity to introduce yourself and your podcast too. So,
absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Michelle. Really appreciate it. So I'm Joshua Smith. I am the owner and founder of Your Speaking Voice LLC, which is a business that does coaching consulting in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And I also have my own podcast that's through the business, which is called Speaking from the Heart, where I do monologue and interview guests just like you do with all kinds of different conversations from I've had people that have talked about what they've been through in their life to get to where they are today, which is really the gist of the show to have those kinds of authentic conversations. But I've also had people that have talked about what they had to do to get there, whether that has gone through suicide, they have gone through drug addiction, sexual abuse,
mhm.
or anything and everything. It's been covered. And I'm really feel like I enter into a space every time I talk about it because I know that it's allowing people to open up, and I feel like I have an honor to be able to show that to the world. So that's a little bit
And
about me.
I want you to know, like, I mean, I could tell after our conversation the first time, but now after having listened to a couple of episodes of your podcast, it really comes through. Your heart really comes through. Like it comes through in your voice, but I can feel it in your energy. You have a very genuine, caring nature, and I think and this is just my like, intuition and my psychological background is like when you are sensitive like that, I think the world just feels harsher, you know? And I imagine, because I'm not a man, but I imagine that being a man and being sensitive and having that heart is potentially even more challenging because of the conditioning and the expectation of what you're supposed to be. So I just really appreciate, the work that you do and how you help people, but
I,
also like your own journey and how you share it. It takes a lot of courage.
I appreciate that. And you are of many people that have thanked me for that. But I've also had other people on the other side say, why you share so much? You're
Mm.
going to get that used against you, and it's going to come back and get you. It's been almost a year. I'm still waiting for somebody to do it. So please be my guest.
Oh man. So speaking from the heart, where did that originate for you?
So that is a really good question. And it all really starts from the fact that I feel with many of the things that I've been through in my life that there hasn't been a chance for people to really speak out loud. Now, that's different from, say, going online and reading all kinds of blog posts or even jumping on social media and seeing the back and forth, which can be very toxic. So I wanted to create a space where I felt that people could be able to be authentic about what their journey is without feeling that they're judged or ridiculed or even have these stereotypes because we hear about all kinds of stereotypes in our lives about what we should be doing, what the way that we should dress, the way that we should talk, the way that we should convey ideas. And I felt that if I didn't do something that showed what my authentic self was, I didn't think that I would be taken seriously. So I have to tell you though, when I started speaking from the heart, it was supposed to be a 90-day experiment where I thought, I'll just put a couple episodes out there. I'll see what people think, and maybe I'll get a couple clients out of it. Well, none of that really happened per se. There's been one or two people that have reached out, but nothing really serious. It actually became something that allowed me to explore what was
Mhm.
in my heart.
Yeah.
So, it's weird how you go into it thinking that it's going to have an external influence, but it has an internal influence instead.
And
So
but I
yeah, go
think
ahead.
that's so important because like it is. I mean, this even doing this podcast for myself, like it I my intention is, always I want to find ways to be of service to humanity, but this is really of service to me too because it allows me like I had to do so much work around my throat chakra and allowing my voice to be heard. And as I and like growing in the confidence of who I am in my authenticity and letting that part of me, that person shine and not being afraid of that. And as I've done that work with myself, like now I just feel so grounded. And then when I did this and I started it, it just feels so natural. Like I'm just like, I can't believe that I'm not afraid to get on here or to even share it with people. Like, I was one of those people. I don't remember if I told you this when we first talked. Like, if I wanted to do a live, I would sit there and hold my phone with my finger over the record button for like 10 minutes, like, and the anxiety in my stomach of, oh my God, like, just press it, just press record and do it. You're fine. I just I was so afraid of judgment, afraid that I would sound stupid, afraid that nobody would want to hear me. And of course, maybe these are voices too, like that I've heard in my life. Like nobody wants to hear what you have to say. Oh, you think whatever. So like you have these like negative voices, and so having to like work through all of that, I don't know. And then now I'm just at a place where it's like it's a compulsion. Like I have to do this because it just feels right. And it seems like that for you too. And I think that's when you are in your authenticity, you're just doing you because it's fun, it's playful, and this is life. And I think that's what I want people to if there's something to take away is that yes, we have our day jobs and we have these things that we have to do, but there's so much more that's available for us. And it can feed you, you know?
There's a lot that you said there that I think for people that are ever skeptical about trying to start a Facebook Live or even just start to have a conversation with someone is getting that conversation done with the person that you are inside yourself, meaning
Mm.
you're talking to yourself first. You're dealing with the imposter, or
Yes.
as we commonly call the imposter syndrome. You're having that
Yeah.
conversation first, which is who you're talking to first before you ever talk to somebody else, whether that's individually or in a group. It's funny because I do public speaking coaching for a living and helping other people find that message that they're trying to unlock. And oftentimes the message is already there. I say, why are you digging around? It's right here. You've already shouting it to the mountaintops. You're already being listened to. Why aren't you talking about that? So I feel that we often overextend ourselves, in which then we have to walk back and be like, oh, I passed you on the way here. I forgot that you were on the side of the road. I'm going to pick you up because you're an important part of this journey. So I
Yeah, like
see that a
come
lot.
along with me. Oh, I love that. I love that. Because it has been like instead of shaming or judging that part of myself, it's like I befriend her, you know, that
You
part of
have to.
me.
You have to. Coaxing someone to be able to say, "You have this gift to share. You have this voice that you have." And I think with doing speaking from the heart, I've had people on the show that after I hit the stop button, they go, "Wow, that was the most open that I've ever had been with someone, and you helped to unlock that in me." And
I
I said,
love
"No,
that.
Yeah, I said, "No, that wasn't me. That was not me whatsoever. That was just that no one's challenged you or asked you in the framework of the questions I've asked or the conversation that we've had to be able to have that authenticity because we are always selling that imposter instead of selling ourselves. So if you're selling the imposter, get rid of the imposter, find what's inside you. And that's why
Mhm.
I love going back to your original question because that's who we have. That's what's inside of us that we often mask because we're guarding ourselves to do that. And I can't tell you how many times in my life that I was guarding that despite all the things that I had going for me and even people saying that I had going for me and just didn't see it.
Well, I wanna lovingly disagree with you on that it's not you, because you have a there's a gentleness to you and an openness that, I mean, I feel like I could just very easily just sit and talk with you. And not
Mm.
everybody has that. So don't I appreciate your humility, and don't dismiss that, because really people need that, and to be able to hold space for somebody to allow that part of themselves to come out. I think that's a testament to who you are. So
You're too kind. I
no,
appreciate that.
I'm just being honest. So we do, I mean, I want to dive into it if it's okay, because we do share, some of our like mental health challenges. I had my own experience with, I mean, I suffered with PTSD symptoms for quite a long time in my life. Um, and I had my own struggles with suicide. And like, so working through, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, the struggle of feeling like I'm such a burden to people because of all of my stuff, you know? And really, and because I'm so passionate about this because I know so many people personally who struggle, but also I, I look at, I mean, I've read case studies after case studies of just the plight of man. And for real, men really struggle in our society.
They do. And are you ready for a long story to how I got here? You
Yeah,
ready for it?
yeah. I want to hear it.
Because it really started at age 13 for me. I had my first experience of depression, and I remember telling my mom about it, and she's like, "Well, it runs in the family." And I'm like, "What do you mean it runs in the family?" So she starts telling me about all the history on my dad's side and how, my uncle had bouts of depression and suicidal ideation and going to mental hospitals in and out throughout his life. I met my uncle. I think he still lives. I actually be honest with you, I never really stayed in touch with him, so I don't know if he's still alive or not. But he my mom told me a lot about this and was making these connections for me. But I was turned on to the drug Effexor from my family doctor to help solve it because if depression has any cure, it's medicine, right? No, it's not. It take medicine is always a good supplement to help with dealing with and processing all kinds of things that are happening,
It
but
can be complementary, sure,
absolutely.
but we have to
So
deal with the underlying issues. Yeah.
you do, and I never dealt with the underlying issues at 13. So to kind of walk it back even further, the reason I say even childhood for that matter that really started this process for me was because I was always, the chubby kid. I was always fat. I was the studious one though, so I'm, like, carrying my books around like, "Oh, look at me, I'm really a smart kid," and everyone's like, "No, you're not. You're really dumb. Ha, ha, ha. You're fat too. Ha, ha, ha." So, there was a lot of that pent-up frustration of not being looked at very well
Mhm.
by other guys that everybody else was athletic. The girls were like, "No, you're not really my type." So I remember constant rejection growing up. And even to this day, I understand a lot more as to why those rejections happen because of the way I process things. But I have to tell you that a lot of it stemmed from even 3rd grade where I was running out of the classroom all of a sudden because of over emotional reactions to things, whether it was something a teacher said, or maybe something that was said by another student, or I wasn't prepared. I remember one time I didn't have my homework done and I literally freaked out. Like I was always good about doing my homework, but I totally forgot to do my homework. And what made it worse is that all the kids knew that and they all laughed at me when I
Oh
didn't have my
man.
homework done. It's like,
Because that was the
oh,
one thing that you felt safe with.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So there were little nuances, little hints as to all these things that were happening, but I'll get to that a little bit later because that really helped to build the foundation for what was happening in my life. But going back to where I was talking about age 13 and such. So I went through school, still got bullied. I had a speech impediment that I worked through, couldn't say certain
Mhm.
words. There's a lot of learning disability that I come to find out that it wasn't really a learning disability. It was because of the way I process things in my head. So come about the fact that I had IEPs done, so individual education plans for
Mhm.
those that don't have kids. So going in the meeting with the principal and trying to figure out, hey, what does Josh need to learn so that he is more equipped for the future? Well, that didn't really happen as much because it turned into more of, well, is he gifted? Is he special? Does he need some other sort of resources? They couldn't figure out what was going on. So I graduated. I have 3 degrees, Michelle, from colleges that I attended, so I obviously was pretty smart and I knew what I was doing, but there was always something all the way back from trying to do my homework, which you just touched on, is that I felt like I was accepted when I was doing the right thing,
Mhm.
and my acceptance came from, you guessed it, other people. So I lived a life where I was always thinking that I need to please this person because they have the keys to me keeping this job, or I need to please this person because they have the keys of me having a solid relationship with someone else. And as a male, I have to tell you, and I know that maybe most males would disagree with me perhaps, and I'm probably taking a big stick and leaning out with it to say that statement, but I think a lot of us suffer in silence that those are the things that we struggle with, and we're trying to keep a best face of, oh, everything's great. And we're keeping our smile really bright so that you know that there's nothing going on.
Mhm.
So I had a lot of that happening up to the point where 4 years ago, literally 3 weeks before COVID happened, all those pressures, all those frustrations, all those letdowns, all those things that I always kept striving for became bricks on my back, and they were starting to not only fall off of this elevator that it was on, but it was falling on my back, and it became too much that, yeah, the night that it happened, February 23rd, 2020, I will never forget that date. I said, it's time to end my life because I just wasn't happy. I was never happy with what I was doing. It was always something that I felt I needed to do more.
It was
And
never enough. Yeah.
yes. And it was such a struggle for me that day. I remember it really broadly. I woke up like any other day where I felt I can take on the world. I got so much I can do. But the day got worse and worse and worse because of all the things that I was trying to take on all at once. I was doing so much. I was a board member of like 3 different nonprofits in the area. I was working a full-time job. I was working a part-time job at the time. And I was trying to juggle all these responsibilities and all these things. And I was not giving myself my time, the time that I needed for personal space to be able to do all that.
And
So
you potentially didn't have the tools, you know?
yes, I did not. And that is a funny thing that you bring that up because the tools that I was given were the tools that from a I would say a public education, public school education for that matter, would have equipped me for like things that I could do outside in the real world. They weren't enough for me.
Right.
They were overlooked. And it's sad because I see kids today struggle with that adaptation, being able to feel like they're accepted. They're surrounded by so many other voices of you need to buy this or you need to do this, you need to conform to whatever is the status quo, whether it's, gender identity, which I know is a hot topic, or just understanding the way in which they should get education in math, economics, engineering, whatever that is. They're being pushed in all kinds of different directions, but they're not being heard. And I felt
Hmm.
like I wasn't being heard a long time ago. So fast forward to the fact that the night that I tried to end my life, I remember having these frantic posts on Facebook, and some of my friends saw these posts and they were calling me and texting me saying, "Josh, like, what's going on? Like, this isn't like you. Like, what's happening? And like, don't do this. Like, it's not cool. Like, we're scared for you." It took there were literally 3 different people that night that called the cops, and they showed up. I was living at a different place in Carlisle at the time, where and the cops came in. They said, "We're looking for Josh Smith," and, like, "I'm here." It's like, "We need to take you to hospital, that we need to figure out if you're okay." I remember sitting in the back of a cop car, flash forward to me being driven to the hospital, and the guy that's driving me, a cop, of course. He's driving down the road and he says to me, and I'll never forget this. He says to me, "You're so young." And I was 32, about ready to turn 33, which ironic enough, that was the day before my birthday. "You're so young. Why are you throwing your life away? Like, you got so much potential. I saw all the things. Your landlord, who I lived with, said good things about you because he didn't know what was going on and he was talking to cops. You have so much to live for." And I'm sitting back and I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I really blew it, didn't I?" Because I even knew, like, I should have been taking care of myself all along. So, you know, I can go on and on about this story, and I'll just wrap it up because I know there's probably a lot of things we can dig into. But what I learned a lot more than anything else from that experience is that when you ignore yourself and you listen to the imposter, kind of what we were talking about earlier, instead of listening to your authentic self. Wow, is there such a light and day difference? Because it's allowed me, since I've been in therapy for 4 years, I still see the same therapist after all this time. After I was released, I went to, a mental institution for 72 hours for observation and all that. I was able to see things in my life that I otherwise would have never seen if it wasn't for some intervention.
So would you say, because I'm just curious, m- having gone through so much of your life feeling like you weren't heard and weren't seen, weren't understood potentially, that experience was like an attempt to really be heard in the moment, and then when you had that, it's almost like a realization perhaps that, oh my gosh, there are people, and they really do care. Was that an awakening then for you?
It was both, actually. It was both a combination of shouting out finally after suppressing my voice, of
Mhm.
not being like feeling like I wasn't being listened to, but at the same time knowing that if I said something, I would be looked at as weak because as a
Mm,
male,
mhm.
like feeling that you're weak is not a good
But it's
thing.
all whether you're a male or not, but I understand. But like we I think judge people who go that route as being weak, like they couldn't handle it. And
Yeah.
I think that people don't realize how much pain somebody really is in to just get to that space, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
It takes a very long time sometimes for people to do that, while other people, it might take a shorter amount of time than what it did. I mean, for me, I'm talking about experiences that happened around 13 years of age, so it took at least 2 decades before
Mhm.
that happened for me, where it finally the pipes burst and the whole waterfall came down on me, whether that was bricks or whatever you wanna call it. But the other thing that kind of came to light, the fact that I was also saying all these things and finally speaking up, was that if I could be able to live a life in which I was learning to give my gifts that I do know I have control of, that I feel more comfortable in being able to express myself and helping others to express themselves, because that was something that I always felt was a kindred connection.
Mm.
I felt like that was really important for me to do too. So the interesting thing about it though, and to circle back on what I said earlier about there was these small things that happened when I was a kid. Well, it wasn't until about a year ago, literally, that I asked some questions about, well, what's the connection between what I was doing back then and what I'm doing now? Because I feel like there's still some issues happening here. And I pointed this out to my therapist, and because someone shared with me an article about autistic burnout.
Mm,
And if you read about autistic burnout on any sort of website, whether it's official or not, you get the idea of firsthand accounts of always being exhausted, always feeling like you have this energy wave pattern going up and down, up and down. It was almost like a sense of bipolar, which I was diagnosed at one point of bipolar depression, but it was not the case. So once I showed all these different articles, she's like, we need to get you tested. It wasn't until March of last year, Michelle, I found out that I was autistic all this
mhm,
time. And all the diagnoses, all the medicines, all the things that they tried to put me through were for naught. And I was mad for a period of time. I remember going to the gym and like literally exercising my butt off. Like my butt literally like
just to get it
detached from
out.
itself and fell off the floor. Yeah. Yeah. I needed to get it out. I needed to get it out because I was
Yeah.
so mad. Like it was like everybody let me down. Why did everybody let me down? I was blaming everybody else, but then I realized that I should have stopped. I need to stop blaming other people. That's what got me in this in the first place. If there was anybody to blame, it was me.
Well, I don't want you to go. I don't want. I don't like that.
I know you
Because
I know, but hear
yeah.
me out why I say that. Because we all have a choice as to what the way in which we can live. I never really was willing to make that change in my life or make that choice. And for some people, it's very hard to make that choice because
Mhm.
sometimes it means sacrificing something of comfort or things that you do as routine. And autistic people, depending on who you talk to, because there's a variety of different people on different scales, it's all kinds of different things that you have going on that you function at. So whether it's social, whether it's doing the day to day, we all have different energy levels. For me, I made the conscious choice of I feel more comfortable staying in this and I don't want to make any changes. So, as much as that's unpopular, I would say why I say myself today and why I'm saying to you and your listeners that it was me is because I shied away from making some hard choices in my life. And
I
the hard
appreciate your accountability there.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
there's accountability that had to happen first
Mhm.
before anything else.
And I
And
think that's important for all of us. I talk a lot about facing the mirror, looking in the mirror. And, in any situation that we find ourselves in where there's some sort of negative experience that we're having, I always look at myself and go, what is my part to play here? Because we are all playing a part. And I don't know how I got to that, honestly. Like, I used to be someone that would like blame others, and it's not me. I'm a good girl. But like, I don't even know when that shifted for me, where I really started looking at myself going, no, you have a part to play here too. And maybe that's from, because you just said it a couple minutes ago about control. I realized at some point that I cannot control other people, and trying to is futile. So, but what I can control is how I respond to other people, how I'm going to react in this moment. And that's when I really started doing that work for myself. So,
it's very challenging work, but it's also work in which when you look at it from the outside looking in, it's so amazing to see where those dots connect, and
mhm,
I've been doing a lot more of that as a result of just that awareness that there was a lot of things that happened for that reason. Does that mean that I should look back at my life and just wallow in pity? No, it doesn't mean that. It means having appreciation for it, that it
mhm,
did happen, and I think some people might have that opportunity to do that sometimes because they're faced with it like I was, while other people, they don't really know how that all connects because they're always doing what's in the present. "Oh, I gotta go to the grocery store and pick up a couple things," or gotta take care of my kids, or I gotta make supper, whatever it is. Like we're
mhm.
worried about the day to day, which is sometimes what we get overwhelmed with.
And I think being so I sort of look at human beings in general as we're all on the spectrum. It's just where we fall on that spectrum, right? I joke that because I took applied psychology and it was a lot of stats, and so one of my jokes is like I'm 2 standard deviations from the norm.
I got
Just
that because I took a statistics class, so I
me,
understood that.
me with all of my crazy, my woo, but like I am in my intensity, and my level of processing, my sensitivity, so, and I think that even when I'm trying to do the regular mundane tasks, my brain is always going, you know, and it can really, when you're in a negative headspace and you don't know, like I'm thinking back to like when I didn't really have that awareness of I'm really diving into this really dark place right now, and I can really go to like a dark place. And then seeing myself and sort of getting that observer's point of view of myself, like witnessing myself, I got better at pulling myself out of that. But without that, man, that was really hard because you can just sit. I could sit in it for a while. Um, that negative processing and learning to break those patterns. But to do that, you have to see it about yourself. And so it sounds like for you, I think definitely it helps when you find a good counselor. I've been through a few in my life, but I have luckily found a few good ones that because I have a couple for different. I have one that she's sort of my like regular. I call her my everyday counselor, but she's been with me now for like I don't even know how long have I lived here. 2015. So oh my gosh, almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Um, and I went to her. My son was 5, and I went to her. My daughter was like 2, and I said, I I am just I am so angry, and I'm getting angry at my like little child, like my son, and he doesn't deserve it, and I need help. And that was my first session with her. Like I don't like how angry I am and how I feel like I'm afraid of how I'm out of control, in my response to him. He doesn't deserve the intensity of with which I'm bringing. And I'll never forget her telling me, and I share this advice to everyone now who talks about anger and rage, is anger is an umbrella emotion and there's always something under it. And she encouraged me next time I got angry with him to just pause for a minute and ask myself, what is underneath this feeling right now? And for me, it was helplessness. Like I
Mm.
didn't know, I felt helpless. And part of that was, feeling like I didn't have great examples of how to handle anger in my life. Um, so not knowing how to respond to him or how to help him with his stuff. Like he would come home from school and he would just throw a tantrum, and I would be so excited to see him, and then I would be so disappointed. And I just
Oh.
like so that helplessness, but as a parent, like you do a lot of times you're going to feel helpless. And so when I was able to finally name those emotions, like that too, like that's really freeing to be like, okay, in this moment, I'm not really angry, I'm helpless and afraid. So, okay, how can I address that?
I think that even for me, those words that you said, the helplessness and having that sort of feeling was a lot of what I experienced immediately after I tried to end my life and the days after because I was out of work for weeks just trying to get my shit together,
Mhm.
literally. And when I was able to put that all together, I realized that I was really just crying out for help, and
Yeah.
it's okay to feel that. I think that we often think as a society that if we have to ask for help, we're weak. But we if you think about it, most of our life has been a combination of, like, having help, and the later part of our lives, those that are seniors, are also relying on other people to help them.
Mhm.
So we
Gosh,
all are all in this
yes.
together.
Oh my God, I love that you just said that, and it made me think of, you know, when you have children, one of the things that I've said to them ever since they were young is Like if they're trying to do something and they could get frustrated, I'd be like, ask for help. I'll help you, you know? There's nothing wrong with that. And then you're right, like as we age and we always need each other. So this idea that like we should just be these very independent people, we shouldn't need anybody else, we should just be able to do it ourselves. And I know that some of that comes from, you know, whatever issues we've had as children. Maybe we had caretakers that weren't equipped to do that for us. But I really hope that with these younger generations that we can have some coming together and see that like we really do need each other. We need each other because number one, we all have blind spots that we can't see without each other. We need people in our lives to be able to reflect back to us with honesty and love and be like I did with you. And I was like, well, I'm gonna disagree with you there. We need people like that to do that for us. But even if you disagree with my disagreement, that's okay. That helps you solidify your stance, but it gives you like just a little bit of that turning of the prism to be like, oh, there is another perspective that maybe I didn't see. And you need to be able to have that and ask, when you need something and say, okay, I'm really struggling here. Some of my darkest moments, I mean, I'll never forget, and this was just a couple of years ago. And again, and I want to say that, like, because at this point in my life, I think, I get a lot of feedback on how I look so grounded and I am so this and, whatever. And I appreciate that because I've done a lot of work on myself. But I mean, I have gone through some really hard times. And, I remember even I think 2 years ago, just having a day. You don't know, like, I had a day and, was in the middle of a divorce, and everything was just so intense and emotionally, and I just started to feel like shit about myself, and again, that burden, that sense of burden, and even at the space that I was at with myself of being like, I know better than this. I should be doing better than this, and so really being harsh with myself, judgmental with myself. And I remember sitting in my room at the time. I was living in the basement because we were separated but living together. And I was like, I don't, and I think we had a fight that day. And I was just like, I don't think I can call anyone right now. I just remember feeling very alone and the lies that we tell ourselves. Because I do have people that I could call. I could call probably three people that I think of immediately. But in that moment, I felt like there was nobody that I could call. And just something as simple as that and telling yourself that. Um, I will say the progress that I saw. Can you still hear me? Because I see that I
Yeah,
froze.
yeah, yeah, I see you, I hear you, but I don't
Okay.
s oh, there we go, now I see you. Yep.
The progress that I saw in myself was I didn't stay there long. So I want people to know that like you can struggle with these feelings and like to be gentle with yourself if you do find yourself going back there, that try to look for the progress. Like I could have stayed there for hours and hours or days, and instead it only lasted like 4 hours, and then immediately like the next day I reached out to a friend and I told her my experience, and that's it too. Like shame thrives in silence, but it
Mm.
dissolves when we share it with safe people. Um, and I immediately felt better because she loves me. She didn't judge me. She was sad for me. She actually cried knowing that I felt like I couldn't call anybody. She's like, "I'm so sorry that you felt that way." You know.
I felt the same way for a long time about reaching out to people because of that. And I love what you said. Shame, it thrives in silence. It's so true because I definitely have had moments, and even now I still have moments where I'm like, oh, I'm a terrible person, and I can't believe I said that to somebody today. I can't believe it. I'm self-critiquing myself.
Mm,
But when you're able to take a step back and give yourself that space, which I even tell people, if people are going through a mental health crisis, even if it's suicide, it's already too late. What you could say might not even make a difference. You need to get someone else to help intervene.
mhm,
Someone that's more professionally trained and help. at that moment in when I was going through what I was going through, I already shut down. It was too late. So I do value that there is space that you said that you needed to create for yourself, and when you were ready, that's when it's time to talk. Not before, not after. It's when you're ready. Because I think most people think that I need to do something right away. I need to do something right away. When somebody is going through and processing those sort of emotions, I know this is unpopular opinion, but like I said, it's too late when they're going through the midst of that to be able to make a difference. And I know it's really cruel and rude to say, but when they are going through that, they have their heart set on it. So there has to be some other way that we are not trained, and I'm not saying that we are not capable of being trained, but let's put it into someone's hands that have the practicum to be able to do that. There are people
It's
that are
really hard to
trained.
be like, I feel like what you're talking about is prevention, and it's really
Yes.
hard to be preventative, like, in that situation, and even if you talk about it from, like, a neurological standpoint, you're not in the right space in your mind, like, you're way in your amygdala, like, you're in fear, you're in shutdown, like,
Yes.
it's hard to reach you, so you have to, like, how could you, right? Like, so you have to hope that either that person makes it through like I did and then reaches out to somebody and shares it, or like what you did where you sort of put it out there and people kind of took the reins for you.
Yes, they you have to let someone else take the reins, but there's one thing I have to say too that's really important to kind of think about is to also when that time and that space is ready, don't say you did the wrong thing or you shouldn't have done that. It's already
Mhm.
been done. Come with it as you're wrapping your arm around them and you're
Yeah,
asking them, I know that this had to been very tough for you. What can I do to help you?
empathy. Mhm.
Empathy. That is so important to have the empathy, be empathetic as to what that
Mhm.
situation is. Even if you don't understand it, you can understand it by just being able to ask, "What can I do to help?"
And I think that's where a lot of people really don't understand, again, like how much pain somebody has to be in. And they have a hard time empathizing. And so their mind goes into something is wrong with you, or, they're making judgments about you. And there's fear around this topic too. Am I going to say the wrong thing? And I honestly, it really is just, it's understanding that somebody is hurting deeply. And what do you do when someone's hurting deeply? You ask them, like, how can I help? What do you need? How can I, like, and just be a resource for listening. So,
The the biggest part of why I even did what I'm doing now, Michelle, is because there are people that don't have that resource. They don't know who to turn to. And even if they do have that resource, they don't feel comfortable with certain
mhm.
things. So like I love what you said, like I have a therapist for this, I have a therapist for that. That I have a coach for this, I have a coach for that.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
we joke about it in the coaching industry that we need to have our own coaches. And because we need to have that prism, like you said, to be able to
Hmm.
see that. I wanna have that prism. I feel like on my podcast, I can have that prism so that I can look at it retrospectively, and you're not the first person to tell me, "You're wrong, Josh," or "I lovingly disagree." So I love that. I love that you challenged me because if I'm not challenged, I'm not growing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Hmm.
Yeah. And I love the fact that for people that are able to come on and be able to say that and share that, and even if there's something that you are going through and there's a lot of shame with it, empathy and humility can go so far,
Oh my gosh.
but it's only when that person is ready. When they're
Yeah.
ready to take that curtain and push it to the side and be like, I'm ready to have you come in. And I can't tell you how many years even after that it took me to get to this point to be able to even share that story of what I've been through because there was a lot of shame with that.
Hmm.
But the shame does not have to be there forever. If you wanna let that empower you or somebody else, yeah, that will be powerful in itself and it will take you down, but you don't need to give it power. It's only when you say that I'm going to divert my energies to something that's a lot more positive or a lot more productive. That's when you finally break the cycle.
Well, and I was just looking at my notes from the time that we talked. How that's like 2 weeks ago at this point. But I wrote
It's
something about how you help people find their voice. And I love how that's alchemy right there. Like you took your experience of feeling like your voice was suppressed, that nobody could hear you, and you used it and it became medicine. It could be for you and for others. And so look at what you're doing now. And that's so healing, for you and for others. So, and I love that. And I think that's what a lot of us end up doing when we find that we have something that's like our pain or our whatever. You can turn it into gold. That's alchemy. And I love that. I we transmute that into something better.
And when we are talking about that concept of being able to warp it, it also doesn't mean that it's easy work, that
Oh
you
my
come in
gosh.
and be able to snap your fingers and say, "It's done."
It's the
It
work of
takes
your life.
yeah, it
It's
takes time.
yeah.
And I feel that in our society where we have everything instantly given to us, whether it's instant demand, whether we go and watch a Netflix movie of our favorite or binge watch our favorite shows, or even go and buy something. It's as simple as clicking and putting it in a shopping cart.
Mhm.
It's not as easy with coaching to be able to share that experience, which is why I see some coaches that make it, while others have been fortunate enough to see through the weeds and to the other side of the forest and be able to do that. So when I use the term voice, which I appreciate you bringing up, voice is not just what we say, it's what we do too.
Mhm.
It has so many connotations that the right way to make gold is not necessarily the right way in, say, someone else's life. They might be making silver because of they're using that same formula. So the formula is not the same as when we go and look at celebrities or politicians and how they're able to do that, make that be eloquent in nature or accomplish things. There are so many different ways in which to make gold. And
Mhm.
we have to find the right formula as it relates to us.
Yeah, I was just going to say I love how you just said that. I was just going to say it's
I
unique to all of
contemplated
us.
about it way yeah, I was gonna say, I contemplated it way too many times to know that it's not the way that we always think is the way to do it. It's not true. It comes in so many different ways.
Yes, it's your unique expression, and it's your unique expression that is needed so much. And that's what I always want to impress upon people, that it's not about that it needs to look like this, and we're like success doesn't need to look the same for everyone. And not everyone needs to, rise to this certain status, where we're all going to be this like very important person, whatever. Like we need people, what we need is for people to just be their most authentic selves. And whatever that is that brings you joy, we need that energy.
I have lived a lot of lies in my life when it came to feeling the way that I felt, the way that I experienced relationships, which I can tell you, I have been in some very unhealthy relationships, and I am not afraid to admit it because of the things that I become addicted to with the, oh, I'm getting attention, or I feel like I'm being gratified. There's all kinds of things that we are always seeking, that we're thinking that those are the things that we need to feel fulfilled. Yeah, we're human creatures. We have all kinds of different inhibitions and different abilities that we need to have. But if we're able to really truly live a life of that authenticity, it means that we're also going to piss people off because they are
Yeah.
not agreeing with it. So it's okay if you have the haters that hate you or the people that look way off in the distance and they're like, oh gosh, Josh is a really terrible person. I can't believe he said that. Like they're whispering about you, and that's okay. That's okay. I know that I have a lot of those sort of people, but if I know that they're talking about me, then I'm winning. I'm winning every step of the way because it doesn't necessarily always need to be a positive experience. I know that I'm helping others by seeing letting them see and not giving them a bunch of fluff.
And just being yourself and being able to have these, like, this is real talk, right? Like this is you and me, we're just talking, like, and it's just real and it's just truth for both of us, and that's it. And I'm so aware that people are going to listen to this and be like, both of these people struggled with suicide. They have no business like helping other people or coaching other people, and that's just bullshit. Like
Yeah.
I want to work with people who are real, who have been through struggles and gotten to the other side, who know what it's like felt in their body, who, who can really understand and empathize with me. Um, I think that's something that kept me from like really sharing these things about myself for so long. Because you think like, oh, I people are not going to think that I'm good enough, or that, like, who's going to want to work with me if they know that I have all these struggles. My goodness, like, I have worked through so much stuff, and if people don't want to work with me because of it, that's all right. Like, I've gotten to that place, and that feels so freeing. I just don't care. So
Brand. Talk about it. Essentially, the personal brand is us. So
mhm.
if we start to sugarcoat it or add little diamonds to the, oh, well, we've been through this, but we found this, and it's not really the truth, people will sense that it's not the truth.
Yeah.
They have their sensors ready and it's almost like a metal detector. They're gonna be scanning it as they go along. Dee 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 dee. Oh, there it is. There's the lie. Like, and I'm not gonna work with that person. So
Yep.
when I even started doing what I'm doing, I realized that I had to work through a lot of stuff to get to a point that I felt comfortable working with other people. Does that mean though that I have everything solved and my life is perfect? I will be the first one on the top of the mountain to say, I do not have it right. Like I do have a lot of things I need to work on. And as long as people know that I am a work in progress. That's what I want them to know about me.
Yeah.
I I no longer want to feel that I have to defend myself every single step of the way, which is what I was doing. I literally remember always trying to justify my actions, and I still do that. There was another lady recently that was on my show and has challenged me of, you do realize that when people give you compliments that you don't accept compliments very well. And I'm like, what do you mean? So she told me of an example, and she's like, "Instead of doing that, why don't you just say thank you? Just that's it. Just say thank you." And I go, "Wow, that's really important to hear from me because I might be even hurting those other people's feelings when they're making such nice things and saying those nice things." So, there you go. I'm a coach, and I have problems that I have to work on.
Yep.
Surprise.
See, but I would so much rather work with somebody who knows that about themselves and has that self-awareness than somebody who portrays themselves. I mean, it just doesn't resonate with me anymore to, and I think this time of I keep hearing this, going around, but like the time of the guru is done. Like, I want real people, you know.
Mm.
We are flawed human beings. It is what we are. And anybody that tries to present themselves as having it all figured out, or, living in bliss all the time, like, that sounds wonderful. Uh, sure. And I have to say, like, at this place that I'm at in my life now, after all the work that I've done, I feel joyful far more than I feel anything else. And that's amazing. And then there's this little part of me that's like, you better just be present with that because you don't know how long that's going to last. I'm going to ride that wave. It's like, I would much rather be with real people in my life at this point.
And what's appealing about what you say is that for women, I feel that, and I know I'm a male and I'm going to make a statement about this. Women have so many resources available to them more than ever before
We
today. And I
do.
love that. I love that so much because I feel like women didn't get that opportunity. Now, men are having that problem. And
Hmm.
I feel that men being able to speak out loud about it sometimes is shunned upon.
Hmm.
And even other podcast hosts that I've talked to about some of their shows and what they are expressing also identify the same things. Like, dude, it's really tough out there to be able to talk about these sort of things. And I say, well, why do you do it? And they say something along the same lines that I do is I love doing what I'm doing. I love that I'm sharing that out. And
Hmm.
I think it's that renaissance for men to be able to have that time to be able to do
I do
that.
think it's, I mean, dare I say, I do think it's shifting. I think, one of the podcasts that I love, I think it's called Man Enough.
Oh yeah, I've
Um,
heard of it. Yeah.
Justin Baldoni. Um, and there's other people, and I feel bad that I don't remember their names right now. But I love, and even even I follow The Rock. I follow, but like like there's these beautiful, strong men who are talking about their feelings. And I'm like, I love it. I love to see it. I hope that it resonates with people. I hope that it is, you know, uncovering the need for us to be able to have these conversations, but particularly men to feel safe, like expressing emotion. But not just to feel safe, because it's not, I don't think it's all that. I think it's also um having the ability to just do that work within, because they're disconnected from it. Or maybe men are not, like, I also want to be mindful, like I'm not trying to say that men should be feminized, or that like we want you to like always be like really emotional. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that men are emotional beings too, and I want for them to be able to feel like they can access that part of themselves,
Hey,
you
I
know?
don't mind a tough female. I really don't. So if you have these big bulgy muscles later on, Michelle, I won't be intimidated.
Well, that's a conversation for another day. We can talk about masculine and feminine energy. But
But you're so
I understand, like, from a evolutionary standpoint, like there's women are essentially more like, we have whatever chemicals we have that allow us to access our intuition and be these emotional beings. But that doesn't mean that we are not also logical and all the things, just like men are, like they're I'm gonna get so much flack for this, but like men are like, their brain is more geared towards being really logical, and then emotion is like a second. It's like an underneath thing that you have a hard time accessing. And so that's all I'm saying, is like having access to that and then being able to like voice that, you know, is so important.
but you identify something that is always tough, is finding that access. Where's the
Hmm.
access point at? And like I said, for women, and I know I'm also gonna get a lot of flack for this, so if you get any messages, feel free to forward them along. I'm sorry, but I feel I just, again, my opinion, and we're being real talk
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
I find that women get a lot of opportunity nowadays to be able to express that in a variety of different formats, whether it's, doing it in a women's only group. I've seen a lot of masterminds
Hmm.
in the area that talk about those struggles and kind of combining forces. And you're right, it is changing for men. I would like to see it sped up a little bit so that we're all on equal footing. Because let's face it, women, men, whether you identify as either or, doesn't matter. We're all allowed to be on that equal playing field. So
Hmm.
there, now I said it. Now I should not get any more messages. Hopefully they deleted them as they started typing that.
Well, I think we covered a lot of ground on here, so I appreciate this conversation. I know we went kind of deep into it. So thank you for being open and honest with me, um, about your struggle. I'm so glad, I said this to you last time, but I'm so happy that you're here,
As I
and
am
I'm
for
so
you.
happy that like we could have this conversation. And I hope that even one person listening to this who might have struggles with, you know, mental health struggles, thoughts of suicide, feeling like they don't matter, feeling like nobody cares, that they can take something from this. So, and when I
I
share this, I will share you know um some resources, and if there's anything that has helped you in particular, please feel free to add to that.
Absolutely. And Michelle, I have to say, thank you for allowing me to be on this. And for those that are struggling, 988, that number, that hotline is so important. You can talk to anyone at any time. You have that accessibility to be able to do that. So if there's one resource out of anything, it's that.
Thank you. Yeah. And I know, I mean, so when I went to school, when I started off as master's in social work, because I wanted to help people. And then I switched to psychology because I wanted to understand people and our behaviors. Um, the people that man those hotlines, they really care. So, and, you know, yeah. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And I just appreciate your time. And I'm going to stop recording. And thank you for anybody who tuned in. And if you have any questions for us or you need resources, please reach out.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of All the Things.